Hey, it's Sunday night, and it's time for 12 minutes of learning. This is Youthology Live. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, we are dealing with two questions that we could not get to last week in episode 22. All right? So those two questions are related to each other. So I pulled those from last week to bring them into tonight. So if you are a youth leader and you're dealing with students who are maybe struggling with the call of God, or maybe they know the call of God on their life, but they're not sure what to do about that, tonight is for you, okay? So here are the two questions. Let me give these to you. The first question is this: how do I know that I'm called to ministry? Okay? And then the second question, related: what should I do if I know that I'm called to youth ministry? So I'm going to give you 4 points for each of those that I think will help you dealing with students who are either struggling with this or who know that they are called to youth ministry, and what should they do about it, okay? So here we go. How do I know that I'm called to ministry, all right? So first of all, let me say this. I think there are many students who are called and they don't know it. So here's how we can help them. Number 1, I believe that you will have a love for God that is inordinate. It's different. It's even if you find students that are serving God, there's this love for God, okay? They have a sensitivity to the Spirit, all right? And so they may not be serving God at the time, and maybe that's not a characteristic trait of their lives, but I believe they will be drawn to Him and sensitive to Him even if they're running from God. Secondly, is a love for people, okay? A love for church people, unchurched people, the misfit, the popular kid, right? There's like this defense of people. Standing up against bullying. Broken, you become broken when an unpopular kid is teased or isolated, right? And it's almost like you have this defense that comes for people, okay? So thirdly, how do I know that I'm called? A love for spiritual growth. Okay, a love for spiritual growth. Let me say it this way. You are not satisfied with where your walk is right now. And there's this drive, this passion for God, to know God in your life. Even if you don't want to right now, and a kid is drifting, right? Or things are going on in their life, they're always drawn back to God, okay? They are intrigued by moments. Catch that? Intrigued by moments. In other words, there's this sensitivity to the move of God, to the altars. I say it this way, a reverence, okay? Like during times of worship, altar time, response time can be emotional for them, okay? And it's just that sensitivity to the Spirit. And not everybody feels that, right? But I think that's one of the characteristics of the call. And then finally, number 4, a love for the church. A love for the church. Even when they may not even be attending, right? And not committed to it. But there's a defense of the church. They love the church. There's a reverence for church. They are drawn to spiritual leaders. So maybe if you're wondering and struggling about the call on your life, but you are attracted or drawn to spiritual leaders, I think that's part of the call because it puts you in that circle, that community, right, of people who are called. And so you have this reverence for them even. So 4 simple things: a love for God, a love for people, and a love for spiritual growth, and finally a love for the church. I think those things will show itself in you if you've got that call on your life. Okay, there are many more things, but when I blog these, I'll put more in the manuscript, okay? So the second question tonight, similar to it, but it really is a follow-up question. And I had a young man DM me who's struggling with this for several years, he said, actually. And so the question is this: what should I do when I know that I'm called to ministry? I don't know what to do right now, okay? So let me encourage you. You can never start too early, okay? You don't need a position or a title. You don't need a license or ordination to begin ministry. So, which leads me to the 4 things I want to help you with once you know you're called. The first one is get involved in ministry now. Don't wait, right? Get involved in youth ministry. Get involved in the youth ministry. Get to as many things as you can and sit under the teaching and watch the events and get involved in the worship. Use your gifts in the youth ministry. Number two, what should I do once I know that I'm called? Seek a mentoring relationship with your youth pastor or your youth leader, right? And if you don't have a youth leader in a smaller setting, with the lead pastor or an elder or deacon, right? Somebody who could help you grow spiritually. Now, I do believe that you should, if you're sensing that call to youth ministry, that it should be somebody who's experienced or working in that area, right? So that's important. Ask questions. Listen, a mentee, someone who's chasing after a mentor, needs to make that a priority. The mentor shouldn't be chasing you around, okay? You should be hungry enough to bug that person and to let you know if you need to back off, right? So look at the models of the people in your life that are spiritual leaders, and you can learn so much from them now, okay? Then, thirdly, the spiritual disciplines. If you know that you're called, you need to begin to exercise the spiritual disciplines in your life. Prayer, fasting, worship, right? Simplicity. The things like, as simple as education. So one of the things that I sent back to the young man who DM'd me this question was, you need to go to a university. You need to get whether it's a Bible college or a liberal arts school, right? You need to go to a university because you can get training, communication, psychology, business, religion, right? Church leadership, so many different things, maybe specific to the call that you feel. Church planting, lead pastor, youth ministry, yay, youth ministry, right? So that's very important, the spiritual disciplines. And then finally, the fourth area, what do I do when I know that I'm called? Begin to pray for your future setting. I tell this to young leaders all the time. When I was a senior in college, my wife and I began to pray that whole senior year. I got married right before my senior year. We began to pray that whole senior year, like weekly. Began to pray for the city that we were going to be at in the next 8 months, right? As we started in the fall, we prayed all the way through the winter and into the spring. Prayed for the leader that we were going to serve. Prayed for the community that we were going to be in. Prayed for the leaders we began to pray for high schools and for leaders that we would have. We began to pray for teenagers who would be in our youth group. And so for months, we were praying for the setting that we were going to walk into shortly after that. So I think that's really important. Let me close with this thought. Middle Eastern custom has this term called bellwether. A bellwether, like a bellwether cow. And what they would do is they would take a lead cow of this herd, okay? And they would put a bell on that cow. And wherever that cow would go, the bell would shake, right, and sound. And everyone else would be drawn to the bellwether, right? To the direction of that lead cow or whatever, right? So the reason I'm sharing that is I think that our gifted students who are called are bellwethers to their, not just to their generation, but to their youth ministry. So find those kids, pull the gifts out of them, and involve them in some of these things that we just talked about, right? And raise them up now. There are over 70, okay? At one point it was almost 80, and I probably need to go back and look at this again. Over almost 80 students who've come out of our youth ministry who are involved in ministry now as missionaries and pastors and church planters and youth pastors and children's pastors and worship leaders and teachers at the university level. Okay, so I want you to consider as a leader the kind of things that we talked about here so that you can raise up spiritual leaders in their generation. Okay, so I hope that was helpful to you. Again, you know that we are right here every Sunday night, 9 p.m. Central, for Youthology Live, 12 minutes of learning. Thank you for joining us. God bless. Have a great week.